we begin our episode, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Yanira, first of all for being part of this podcast series, and secondly for being the woman she is and being an example of excellence. Me and Yanira met way back in 2016 through a program called Partnership for Kids when I was a freshman in high school, and we kind of lost touch after I graduated high school. And during college, when I was a sophomore or junior year, I ran into her on campus, which is so funny because, you know, God has a way of doing things, and it just felt like He was drawing me to her, and it's just been a privilege getting to know her experiences, getting to have that person that you can connect with, and I just wanted to give her a personal thank you for who she is. I also wanted to personally thank all of the role models like my sisters, guidance counselors, other mentors that have made me the person I am now. And so I'm very thankful to be a strong Latina and a young professional. And so I just wanted to thank everyone, but especially Yanira. Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome to, season 2 of our Performance Parakone podcast. Where we left off last time was our 4th episode with Itzel. It was great, and we're really excited for today's guest that we're bringing on. A bit of like a segue from our last episode into today's conversation. So today we brought Yanira Garcia to join us. So thank you for being here.
For sure, thank you for having me.
So a little bit, she currently serves on the board of the Latino Economic Development Council, also the Senior Strategic Implementations Associate for FNBO, First National Bank of Omaha. So she also has a ton of other experience, which we'll get into, but that's a little bit of a brief explanation for you. Yanira, do you want to give us a little bit more of your background, just a little intro?
Yeah, so overall, I am a very proud Mexican. Moved to the U.S., specifically Omaha, when I was 9 years old, and moved with my parents, obviously. I didn't just make the decision by myself at 9 years old, but my dad came to work at the meat packing plants, and he brought my mom, and at the time it was me and 2 sisters, and then now I have 2 more brothers as well who were born here in Omaha, so I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. Have lived in South Omaha for the past, I think at this point, it's like 27 years. So yeah, been a South Omaha product all along. Went to elementary school there, kind of hopped around to a couple different elementary schools within OPS, and then went to Bryan Middle School, and then went to South High and graduated from South. Nice. Went to UNO, and then still here.
Yeah, here we go. Omaha raised. Almost insane. So, I know that you guys kind of have a little bit of a history. So we're gonna kind of let you lead this and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we share a last name, but we're not related.
Last name just saying.
Yeah. So I feel like we have a lot of shared experiences. Like you went to South, I went to South, you went to UNO. I started at Lincoln, but I transferred to UNO. So I just wanted to know kind of like your educational journey. What was that like? I mean, you were the first in your family to go to college, so I bet that was, a bit of a challenge in itself. So I just want to talk more about how that was for you.
Yeah, great question. So I feel like there's, and we were talking about this right before the podcast started, but ultimately, really what got me to college is those mentors in life, right? Those people that are, thank God, looking after us and telling us, do something with your life, or at the very least setting the example by doing things that maybe they're not verbally telling you, like, hey, are you thinking about going to college, or are you thinking about doing something with your life? But they're out there doing things and they're also trying to not just do things for themselves, but also like trying to bring the community or the young folks, in my case, along, or volunteering you to do things. And I think that little by little, it's kind of what pushed me to get involved, to get to know people, to kind of broaden my circle, to understand and know that, there's more out there, right, than just like showing up to school, going to school and doing the the things every day, but that there's actually a purpose as to why we do that. So I think that little by little, those influencers in my young life, in school, honestly, liaisons were some of those for me. At the time, there wasn't really a diverse group of teachers, so the liaisons were taking on the counseling jobs, the everything. And so I think they had definitely had an impact in my life. And then from there on, like I said, other people that maybe didn't directly said, hey, enroll to go to college, or come here, fill out this application for a scholarship or whatever. But they were doing it in a way that they were kind of influencing you and telling you, like, this is what it looks like to be successful, or to want more, to get an education. So yeah, that's kind of how it all happened.
Yeah. And in college, you started to get more involved. Were you a part of ALES?
I was.
You were?
Yes.
Okay. There you go. Another thing that we have in common.
Yep. I never made it to president, but yes, I was involved.
Yeah. So getting in those like extracurriculars, would you say like that's really important, or is that like something that you like? Because I know in high school I was really involved, and then in college I was like, I don't really know if I really need this. So what would you say to like a college student that's like maybe freshman, sophomore year, and they're like, I don't know anyone. This is a new college. I'm out of state, and I don't know if I really want to get involved.
Yeah, no, it's very important to get involved. I think were you involved in the Spanish club, or what was it called? Latino Leaders Club in high school?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't?
No.
Okay, so that was the thing when I was in high school, and that was probably like the closest to an ALAS kind of organization.
I think I was like briefly in it, but then I didn't really like the teacher or whoever was sponsoring
Were
it.
you a part of that?
Yeah. Okay. So yes and no. I was that child in high school who was like, yes, but then you don't really find the connection with other people. So you end up being like, I don't know, it's uncomfortable, right? We all know it's uncomfortable to go to a new place and not meet friends right away. Yep. So I think it was a little bit of that for me. I would go and just feel like, I don't know. And then somebody would say, come on, let's go again. Peer pressure. Okay, fine, let's go. And then it's like, I don't know. So it was on and off. But listen to how important even those little things are, because it is like just pushing somebody, or just being exposed to some of the kids that are really involved, that are like doing fundraisers and like serving as president and secretary and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then when you're first just coming in, you're like, you feel a little intimidated because you're like, these kids they got it all figured out. They know what they're doing. They're out there. And part of me was like, good for them. And part of me was also like, that's kind of cool. How do I get involved, you know? Yeah. So that was kind of a little bit of the adventures I had in high school. But then when I went to college, I felt, honestly, quite surprisingly, that it was kind of like a new opportunity for me to start from scratch and to kind of do all those things that I saw those kids do. That now I was like, okay, well, I didn't quite do it in high school the way I wanted to. Maybe this is my chance to really get involved and to really do it. And so without a doubt, I started meeting people, hearing students in classes, just kind of hearing them talk about things they were involved in. And I'd be like, tell me more. And when do you guys meet? And when can I come? Can I just show up? Or, that kind of a thing. And that's how I started getting involved.
Yeah. And then while you were in college, did you always know, because you're in marketing, in the marketing industry, correct? Did you always know that that's where you like wanted to land when you were in college, or was that just kind of like something that happened by coincidence?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I knew right away. I actually went to college not knowing what the heck I was getting myself into or what I was even going to end up doing. I enrolled for classes. I ended up getting a scholarship and everything, going to college, knowing that I was going to do something and make something out of my life and my future. I didn't know what, but I knew this is the right way. This is the right thing to do. I don't know what, I'll figure it out. And thankfully, like I said, I just kind of came across the right people at the right time that kind of taught me a thing or two about careers and getting involved. By the way, sometimes colleges offer career advice programs. I think students should definitely take advantage of those because they'll teach you things you don't know, things you're not aware of. A lot of it may sound redundant and repetitive, but there's always something new to learn and something new to do with that information, right? So I think that for me, as I was trying to figure it out, I was just doing everything. Like I was going to my advisors often and just saying like, hey, what would it look like if I like didn't know what I wanted to do? I literally sounded like that. Yeah. But I wanted to, maybe I was interested in history, and maybe I was interested in business, and maybe I also was interested in the arts. Like, what would you recommend?
Like all over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
But I did start off at Bellevue University. Okay. So it is a business school, or known to be a business school. So I kind of by default went in saying, yeah, sure, I'll do business, even though in my head, deep down inside, I was like, I don't know that that's what I want to do, but I'm going to say something just so that I can at least find my groove. And I did. I had a major in business. Actually, it wasn't even business. It was specifically accounting. I remember that. Okay. And I had a minor in communications because I had taken some electives. So that's why I got out of my advisor. She was like, well, maybe you should knock off these classes that you're going to be required anyway, and then explore these other options, and we'll meet up again and let me know how you're feeling. Yeah. So I remember taking one of the entry-level communications courses, and I was loving it. And then I took the next one, and I was loving it. And I was like, this is so interesting. And I remember telling some of my friends, maybe I should switch it around, like have a major in communications and then a minor in accounting or something else. But they didn't have a major at the time.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to come of it. Long story short, I ended up transferring to UNO, and now UNO had communications majors. And so that's where I was like, okay, here's my chance to really go after what I really wanted. By the way, in case anybody was wondering, I hated accounting and I sucked at it. So I'm glad I didn't go into that.
Maybe it's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah. No, very cool. I mean, I'm kind of curious too, having looked. So you participated in a lot of different organizations. You worked at Telemundo as an intern, of course, communications. But we noticed that you came back to UNO and helped kind of serve there. What's your story? Why'd you come back to UNO after doing all these other things?
Yeah. So I really thought after entering at Telemundo, that was probably the most wildest, most amazing experience in my life because I actually got to interview Barack Obama.
No way.
Yes. I got to interview at the time Andres, and I'm forgetting his last name, but he was the chef of the White House. He was awarded.
That's cool.
Yeah, I got to interview quite a few big name advocacy people out there. Yeah. And a few senators that are no longer, U.S. senators, congressmen, a lot of activists for sure. Wow. During my time in D.C., it was in 2014. So during that time, there was a lot of the whole unaccompanied minor migrants coming to the U.S. Right. So there was a lot of turmoil with that, immigration reform, the DREAM Act, blah, blah, blah. So we were busy on Capitol Hill. And so it was like the best time to be there as a news reporter or somebody aspiring to be in that field. Yeah. So I think I got the best of it. I was kind of taken under Lori Montenegro's arm. She is now an award-winning journalist. And it was just such a cool experience. I came back thinking, I actually tried to stay in D.C.
So you were in D.C. for that time. Mm-hmm. Okay, wow.
So I actually tried to stay there, try to find jobs there. I did interview for a couple. I will say, I think being younger at the time, also being the first one in my family to go to college, to do all these things. At the time, I found myself being the first in my family to have to make these tough decisions of how do I chase after a professional career away from my family, by myself, not knowing what to do. And then also, as I was learning about the economy in DC, it's pretty expensive to live there. A lot of the people who end up staying, because it is a young city, so a lot of the people who are there are usually from other states. Okay. And so I wouldn't be the first one, right? But what I did learn was that a lot of people don't actually live in DC unless you can afford it. They live in the suburbs or outside, and then they just commute all the time, which there was a lot of tough decisions, as you can imagine, for a young professional, right? Who's like, how do I manage all of this? Jobs weren't paying a lot, especially in the communication sector. And so I ended up deciding it was probably better for me to come back home, knock on doors, figure out opportunities of things that I could do here. And that's how I ended up at Omaha Noticias at the time, which is now Telemundo, Nebraska.
Okay, so you came to Telemundo, Nebraska. Okay.
Yeah.
So then eventually you progressed to UNO and was there for a little while. And I know that something that I know Sulema can touch on this a little bit, but you did some mentorship. You kind of helped mentor and stuff. And you talked earlier about how important that mentorship was for you. I mean, is there any connection from how those mentors affected you to how you came back to UNO or even helped others through those positions? Yeah.
So during my time in college, so I feel like I didn't really answer your question earlier, but yes, that ties it back to that. So thank you. That's why I think it's important to get involved, to meet other people, not only because you will meet your lifelong friends in college and continue, like, to this day, those are some of the people that I interact with in a professional setting oftentimes. Right. So it's nice to have those connections early on. And also, by getting involved, you're more likely to interact with administrative staff, with professors, right? And I'm still in touch with some of my professors, and that's just amazing to be able to have those references later.
Any professors you want to like shout out that might still be at UNO?
Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. Casas, I know Dr. Gouveia is no longer at UNO, but she was also a very influential person in my life. I have, Karen Weber. Yeah. So not Latina professor, but she was nonetheless a professor that really, really pushed me and really got me to get involved with PRSSA, Maverick PR, and all those other places. Dr. Stover, Lina Traslaviña. She wasn't a professor, but she was my boss. I knew eventually. Nice. So, there's so many other people that I can name that I'm not thinking of right now. But everybody, it's just like such a cool community because we all, when I worked there too, we all kind of help each other mentor people too. Yeah. So somebody might have reached out to me saying, hey, I have this student that is interested in X, Y, and Z. I know that you know a thing or two about this. What do you think I can do to help, or do you want to meet with them? Right. So that's the importance of being involved, making those connections and impressions, because then somebody will talk about you eventually. And then the moment they hear of a job opportunity or an internship or something, you'll think of, oh, I know somebody actually who just came to my office the other day or just told me the other day that they're looking for an internship. Yeah. Right. And so, yes, getting involved is important. I cannot stress it enough. And finding the opportunities to learn new skills, to network, it's just as important.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was telling Marcos that you had shared with me the intern opportunity for Casa, the marketing one, and I didn't end up applying for it. But, a few months after that, I was the BSF intern. I'm just like, it's so funny how things happen. And I'm a huge believer of the saying, like, things happen for a reason. And I feel like you just, like, planted that seed at first. And then, because when I heard about they were looking for an intern for BSF, I was like, oh, you know what? My sister got that scholarship, and I think it might be fun. And Yanira was also kind of, like, mentioning it to me, so maybe I should do it. And then it just all came back, like, full circle. And now we're here, and it's, it's crazy. Yeah.
And she's killing it, right?
Absolutely. Greatest co-host ever.
Yeah.
sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. No, she's honestly great, and we're super thankful to have Sulaima with us, and so.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, as a professional, as a young professional, it's really hard to find your footing. And I think one of the main topics that I wanted to talk about today was feeling like you don't belong or that you don't deserve your spot because number one, you're young, and number two, you're a Latina. And I think that's really important for us to talk about today because I feel like a lot of the people that BSF helps are, Latinas and young Latinos that are trying to find their footing, whether that's in college or just finding, an internship or something like that. So did you ever experience, it's called the imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. Did you ever experience that during your journey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. And I'll tell you this. So, yes, first of all, I remember I was awarded the Buffett Thompson Scholarship, and I was starting at UNO. And I remember thinking, like, when I was in high school, this is actually full circle that you're mentioning this. So thank you for the question, because when I was in high school thinking about college, and I told you guys earlier, ended up going to Bellevue. Okay, Bellevue is a non-traditional university, right? Mostly for adult learners and online people. So it's not the most exciting thing for a high schooler, right? All of my other friends were talking about going to 4-year college, and some of them were talking about going out of state. And as you guys remember, that senior year, everyone's buzzing about it. It's such a big deal. And where are you going to choose to go? Where did you get admitted? And all those things. And I just kind of remember, if you will picture this with me, kind of like that child on the outside, like in the corner, like just look from the outside looking in. I think my story was slightly different in the sense that I was an undocumented child. So I knew that for me, college was going to look different. And I knew that I always kind of had that little like chip or burden to carry, right? Because everybody else could talk about getting a job, a driver's license, about all these things. And I just kind of always knew that my story was different and it wasn't going to be the same. So I knew that, and I wasn't trying to fit in or be like them because I knew I was different. I just wish that the way that we have, that students now in high school can see themselves going to a 4-year college was kind of like the experience I had, because I never saw myself doing that. So for me, going to Bellevue and actually landing a scholarship there was a huge deal already, because I was like, I didn't even have a chance at college anyway. So the fact that I can do this is a big deal, and I'm going to take advantage of it as much as I can. And I'm just going to go for it. And I did. That didn't end up working out too well. But in the midst of it, I remember still thinking, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to figure out what else I'm going to continue to do with my life. I'm not going to give up on education. So what I did is, during this time of uncertainty that I didn't know what I was going to do next, I went to Metro and I enrolled for classes there to kind of continue to knock off my gen eds. And I was like, if this means I'm paying out of pocket, I'd rather do that at a lower cost, thanks to Metro. And then just kind of figure it out. During that time, talking about knowing people in the community, somebody called me to their office and said, hey, and I'm going to leave their name out, but this person was very influential and said, hey, there is this scholarship called the Buffett Thompson Scholarship, and they're taking applications right now. I would encourage you to apply, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. Oh, and one of the things she said, she's like, I know you don't have a social security number. They're not asking for one. So that's why I wanted you to know about it. Again, people who know your story, right? Who keep that in mind, who are like, I know who this can benefit. And that was kind of like the perfect situation for me. I got on it right away, started getting all of my application process. You know how that goes. And then I got the scholarship. I got into UNO. And for the first time, I saw myself going to a 4-year college. So when I walk in, imposter syndrome hits. Because at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I deserve being here. Like, this was not meant to be for me. Like,
I just got lucky.
Yeah. Like, what the heck? What do I do now? Or I remember thinking, this is a huge campus. I'm lost. I don't even know where to go. I don't even know where the Latinos are. Like, what's going on? But yeah, it hits hard. And right now, actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but I am running for office for the first time ever. And imposter syndrome, again, has kind of knocked my door and said, like, what are you doing? Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
This is not meant to be for you, or this is, but here I am. I know it is a psychological thing that we all carry. I know that it is just one of those mental things that we have to work hard to get past and keep pushing forward and take it as just another challenge that we are going to overcome in the best way possible.
Yeah, and one thing to really mention is that in order to overcome it, it's just to be informed that it's something that's going to eventually happen. Like you said, you felt it in college, you feel it now still, but I feel like it comes in waves, because I feel like at first it's kind of like a denial process, like, oh my gosh, this is so big for me, like, what am I doing? But over time, eventually that feeling kind of fades out, and then you feel that sense of belonging that, yes, I deserve my spot here and my voice needs to be heard. Type of thing. So I feel like it's important to emphasize that if you feel like that at this moment, like, that doesn't mean that you're gonna feel like that, forever, permanently. It's just one of those like psychological barriers or little speed bumps that you will face in life. So important to know. But
something that you also mentioned, you brought up like Metro, and recently shout out Metro too, because we were working with Metro, and we've recently expanded into the trade field. And I think you mentioned something about like knowing your story, right? That person that helped you was able to do it because you know your story. Well, Metro, I think, we talked about like college, whatever they're doing, but like looking at things like trades, right, for these students is, I think, because Metro has, connected with us, learned more about our community, they've seen that like, hey, there's another pathway here to like bring students success. And I think that in general, that's helping a lot of students that maybe like, maybe college isn't for me. And like, so where am I at? Like, where do I go? And then I think there's an imposter syndrome of like, everyone's telling me I should be going to college, but I'm like not, or right. And then, so I think Metro has been a great partner in finding out other ways of kind of addressing that, like knowing your story, imposter syndrome, and how can we elevate those kids. And so I wanted to throw that in there as something that I thought was really good. And it's like, what we're trying to do is like, knowing students, knowing, people that are in the community like you, so then people can feel more comfortable to be able to not feel that imposter syndrome, right? And know that there are stories like that out there that represent the ones that we have. So
100%.
Sharing your stories, like Itzel and other people that we have had on the podcast, just knowing that like you're not alone in whatever feeling that you're feeling right now. Like other people have gone through that as well. And if, it feels like an obstacle that is so overbearing and so difficult to surpass, but it's not, because people have your support. And that's another reason why we have like the BSF Student Success Program, so that, students that, might have felt like you did, lost in a new campus, that way they can go to another student and, share their experiences and just have them be heard. When you're feeling these like thoughts of like imposter syndrome, do you have any like affirmations that you tell yourself to get you through like those bad days? Because everyone has them. So what kind of affirmations do you tell yourself to get through?
That's a good one. As you were saying earlier, it's kind of how these programs exist to help students, to motivate students, and help people feel like they're not alone. I would also add that I think, at least for me, I try to embrace the moment. Somebody recently said, as I was sharing, that I felt like an imposter trying to run for office. Somebody said, it's okay, just challenge yourself. And I feel like that's what I would say to any student who feels like giving up, or like they don't belong, or like this is too hard. Because I would tell myself, what am I doing? I have a very great job. my company takes care of me. I'm a mom now. My husband's doing awesome things and he's really involved. And by default, I'm involved. And, you know, I also have my own things going on. What am I doing running for office and putting myself in this super uncomfortable situation? Like, why? and then I would think to myself, like, I'd rather just be super comfortable right now and not have to answer to anybody or not have to like show up to this thing. Because you're right. Sometimes you're just having that day where you're just like, nope, not today. I'm not feeling it. But then this very special person in my life said, challenge yourself. Because if you don't challenge yourself, you're never going to find out what you were capable of. Yeah. You're going to continue to be comfortable in that place. Yeah. And then you're not growing. Yeah. So I said, you know what? You're right. And then you guys probably are not at this stage yet, but I feel like I've hit this stage in my life where I'm 36 years old, 35. Oh my gosh, 35. And I feel like I am at this age where I'm like, okay, this is, I'm at the time where I need to make things count. I need to make them, at least that's how I'm feeling. I've heard other friends around the same age that are like, yeah, like one day it suddenly hits you and you start to question, like, why am I doing this? Is there a purpose? What's the end goal? And I think that that's great that we start to ask ourselves those things, because then you don't do things just because you're trying to check things off a list or just because that's what I've always done. I'm just going to, but instead you ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the end goal? What's the purpose? And what is my purpose? And so I would encourage students, anybody listening to this podcast, really thinking about that challenging moment for them 100%. To ask themselves, like, why? I know it's not easy when you're the first generation or even second generation of going to college student. You're still asking yourself a lot of questions, still feeling insecure or unsure about a lot of things. And you're dealing with all these homework assignments and all these impossible situations in your head that you're like, I am never going to get that A, or this professor is too hard, or they ask for just way too much. And honestly, all that is doing in a way is, it might be hard. I remember being there, but I think it's also psychologically training you for the real world. Because things are going to get tough. And you're going to have to be, your brain has this muscle, right? That says, like, that muscle memory. That's like, we've been here before. We know what to do. You just kind of have to push through it. And you're going to be fine. And it feels so great when you succeed. So keep pushing forward.
Talking about, like, keep pushing forward and talking about, when you're first generation and dealing with these things, a couple days ago, first of all, it was National Latina Day. So, we'd love to give you your flowers for saying,
Thank you.
I think that it's something that's clear when you talk about being the first, imposter syndrome. Like, it's one thing to be a Latino, but it's another thing to be a Latina, I believe, especially, if you want to talk about going into office, how many representatives do we have that even of just people of color, not to say specifically Latina, right? Sometimes I think there's even an extra added, like, layer of imposter syndrome when you're not only doing it generationally first, but on a large scale, like just as a Latina. So we'd like to, ask you more specifically, what's it like being that journey as a Latina? I mean, looking at your record, working your way up, you worked 6 years as a translator to UNO, all these different experiences that now has brought you to somewhere like running for office. What has that journey been like, from where you started from education to again, dealing with these different feelings of, am I enough only as a Latina, but with that extra layer of being a Latina?
I think it helps to see other Latinas out there.
Right.
Kicking butt.
Yes, ma'am.
Kicking bleep.
I was going to say the other word, but then I thought, maybe not. So it helps to see other Latinas representing, making it, in different sectors, different ways. They're shining in different ways, and it just inspiring, and it tells you, like, wow, they can do it. then that means that I can too, right?
100%.
So I think to answer your question, starting off kind of what my education journey has been, then working for UNO, and being able to connect with so many amazing, inspiring young people too, like Sule. I always brag about her because it's true. Like, that's what we do. Right. See, and that's an example of what we do. And I actually just recently, over the last couple of days, been talking to somebody, these 2 females in my life that are mentors. Yeah. And that is exactly what they have told me, word for word, what I'm saying today to Suli. And it's not that I'm just copying what they said, but it's really what we do. They said, I can't wait to brag about you. Yeah. Or things like, I'm always going to talk great about you, and yes, use me as a reference. Or I'm going to be cheering on you. So yes, queen, go do it. Yeah. And, things like that. And it's just so important to have that. That's why I'm always like, let me brag about Suli. She's been amazing. She was like at the top of her class in high school, and she was always involved. She went on to college.
Enough about me.
Hype her up, make her nervous.
Well, thank you. So talking about Latinas, celebrating Latinas, that's what we do. That's what we gotta do. Right. We have to cheer on one another. We have to support one another. We have to encourage one another to do not only the right thing, but to do the difficult thing, right? So when somebody says, I want to run for office, or when somebody says, I want to go get that CEO job or whatever it is, I think it is our job to say, not to say you, but to say, yes, go do it, and what can I do to help?
Yeah, 100%.
What can I do to help, or how can I cheer you on, or how can I support you?
Yeah. So let's just say, you have kids?
Yes, 2 girls.
2 girls? Like, what would you say, something you would want to leave them and say, what's the number one thing you would say, if they went up to you today, was I want to be the CEO of anything. What would be the one advice you would tell them?
Yes. So this is so funny because just last night we were driving back from, I think, Grandma's house, and one of them was telling me, there's been this running joke that my little one, she says she wants to be a doctor, but she wants to be a funny doctor. She said she wanted to be a comedian because she loves to make people laugh, but she really wants to care for people. So she said, how about I just become a funny doctor? I said, I think that's great.
She's smart. New job.
Yes. And then the other one says she wants to be a lawyer, but then she did a little twist on me where she said, that she was going to be a lawyer, but maybe she might be a chef. And I said, well, why a chef? By the way, she's really, really picky with food. Okay. Super picky. So I said, how can you be a chef? You don't even taste most foods because you're so picky. How are you going to know what's good? You have to try everything. And of course, I'm using this as a mom as you have to try other foods. Yeah. But she goes, well, you're right. Maybe I'll just stick with being a lawyer because I'm good at making arguments. I said, yes, you are. She's like, I practice with you all the time, silly. That's what she told me.
Oh my goodness.
Every time she picks an argument, she's actually using it to practice. So, so I was like, okay, too smart. But whenever we talk about, I want to be this, I want to be that, I always say, yes, you're going to be a lawyer and you're going to be the best lawyer. You're going to be a doctor, you're going to be the best, funniest doctor. And so whenever they say, every now and then, they'll be like, Mommy, do you think I could be an astronaut or something like that? Because they like to get my reaction of things that they say they want to do. Yeah. And I'm always like, of course you can. Yes, go be an astronaut, but promise me something. And then they'll say, what? You're going to be the best astronaut.
Right.
So I just... The reason, and I do that with the purpose. Yeah. I do that because, one, I want them to know that there is no limits. They can be anything and everything they want to be. Even if they change their mind in the next 5 minutes, that's okay. But for one. For two, I want to assure them that they have every right to be whatever they think they can be.
Right.
And three, to not only chase after that, but to be the best they can be at it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
for sure. And I feel like I also experienced that with my mom too, when she, as you know, like she wasn't in my life for 10 years, but she always like pushed me to do whatever I could in the best way I could. And taking that, like, I feel like it has shaped me into the young woman that I am now. And so I feel like it's important. Thank you. And so I feel like it's important for other women, like you said, to cheer on other women, like be a girl's girl, as they say. But I'm interested in knowing, like, now that we're talking on like these next generations, do you think that now these newer or younger generations have it a little bit easier for them to, I don't know, get into college, or, you know, just in general, like how easy? Because I know every generation has its own challenges. But would you say that like maybe now it's a little bit easier for them?
I think you nailed it when you said every generation has their own challenges. Honestly, if we go back to my mom and my grandma, they're going to say like, oh, they're always going to look at the other younger generation and say, oh, if you guys only remember how or knew how I had to do it, like back then I used to wash clothes by hand. I didn't have no washer. You know? Just little things like that, right? But it is an example. And I think it's a good example because right now I can sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, the younger generations are going to have it easier because now there's college information everywhere. Now there's Latina teachers everywhere and professors, maybe not everywhere, but there's more of them. And now there's, you know, even people running for office who look like you and I, who speak like you and I, who celebrate. And I could say all those things, but isn't that the purpose? That is the purpose, right? That is why somebody paved the way, you know, speaking from Cesar Chavez to now, like somebody paved the way with the purpose that we would change the future for younger generations. That is the purpose. So yes, today I may be taking on some challenges that younger generations hopefully don't have to face. But to your point, they are going to face their own challenges. What will those be? I don't know. What will they look like? I don't know. But I think our job, and now my job as a parent, is to equip my girls to know that they can do everything and anything, and that they are going to face some challenges, and that is okay. It is part of life, but it's how you face those challenges.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about facing challenges, I think you also mentioned something that's sticking with me is this idea of like telling them they're going to be the best. You know, you're going to face the challenges, but be the best. Like our goal here is always to show, you know, that, you know, we have a lot of students that are the best, right? That's why we're trying to create those, like plug those talents. I think it's less a question of talent and more so of connecting the pathways, you know, finding those mentors, finding those people. Like, for example, at the BSF, you know, even last year we got about 180 applicants and 55% of them want to go to UNO. And earlier you mentioned the whole thing of like, I don't even know if I'm going to go to a 4-year college, right? And I think that's like a discussion we're trying to show, that like show these kids the resources to make that a more of a reality, because we can tell them they're the best, but are we giving them the pathway and the resources so they can actually show that they can showcase that they're the best? And because I know that like I struggle like growing up, just like, you know, I mean, English is my first language. They wanted to put me in an ESL class, and there's a lot of times having to break some of these like different barriers of like, I mean, I have a straight A student, but like I've still felt like, oh, they're not even gonna let me show that, right? So there's a lot of, I think, stories out here of like what we want to put out there, like how can you be your best, and to these next students and this next generations of like knowing we might not know the exact answer to your next generation's problem, but we do know that as long as you're creating that network, like you said, uplifting each other, right? Like Latinas have to uplift Latinas, Latinos have to uplift the whole culture, everybody that's involved with it. That's what we're trying to build here, is this network, this community, realizing that, you know, we need other people to uplift us too outside the community. But I guess it starts from within. How do we lift up our own people from our positions that we worked for and are thankful for as well, you know? So I know we're coming here to the end a little bit, but something I think that Sulema and I talked about a little bit too is the idea of building like generational wealth. And And how do you feel that, like, all this discussion is great, but do you feel like we're moving closer as a society to reaching a point where we can actually build more consistent generational wealth across the board for Latinos and maybe all people of color?
Yeah, it's a good one. And it's a tough question because I would love to say yes.
Right.
But even that, and I'm being completely honest, completely transparent, I think that even as an adult now, you know, like I've mentioned over and over, being a parent, thinking about their future. Yeah, there are some things that my husband and I have learned that comes with education, that we have learned about, our parents obviously didn't do that, not because, one, they had no idea, but two, they had no resources to do it, right? Even if they wanted to, they couldn't have.
Right.
I think that speaking of challenges, I think that is a challenge that now our generation faces, because now we know, for example, my husband and I talk about, how are we going to pay for college for these two girls, right? What can we start doing now? And obviously we know you can set up a college fund, you can start saving up, you can, all these other things, right? Kind of set them up for the future so that they have something to start with. It might not be, you know, everything paid for 100% or whatever, but something to start with that we didn't even have, right? So that's, I think, a huge advantage because now we are trying to figure it out for them.
Yeah.
And we are trying to be proactive and hopefully setting them up just a little bit more ahead than where we were. And I think that is the point. Now, do I have to be realistic too and say that those of us that went to college, like the first generation going to college, or maybe even the second generation, like I said, because of just the economy is tough, right? And everything's expensive and everyone's trying to just get through in life. And sure, some people get super lucky and beyond blessed and are doing super great and can afford, you know, to have their kids set for college already. And that's great for them.
Right.
That is the point. That I'm glad that is what they were able to do. But I think going back to being fully transparent, in my particular situation, I am at this point where I come from a culture and from an upbringing that says you have to, not only when you are able to get up and succeed and strive, you look back and you reach for those that were left behind, right? So I have two parents right now, one that is retired and disabled, and then a mom who's still working but getting close to also retiring. And I'm thinking now, not only how do I provide and secure a better future for my girls, but how do I continue to care for my parents? And so now I think me and a lot of other people maybe in my generation, I can't speak for everybody or for the other generations after that, but I think a lot of us, because I have had those conversations with other peers, and they're saying the same thing. They're thinking, it's a little tougher than I thought because, yes, I'm able to make better money than my parents, but now I have to care for my elderly parent who's, you know, sick or whatever. So I think those are added factors that we don't always calculate, but they're there.
Yeah, which is kind of why I wanted to kind of leave it on that point, because our whole mission here is really student-parent, like, and really connect to the community through the connection between our students and parents and reaching out to these partners so they can see that a lot of times generational wealth, maybe people think future, but Latinos are so family oriented. Like our family is pretty much on our back with us wherever we go. And it's something where a lot of students I know deal with like fear and the pressure of like, you know, maybe they want to be an artist, but they're like, I'm going to get paid way more being a doctor and being able to build that, you know, that's why that question I feel like is really important. Because I think there's a lot of or like thought about like, you know, how am I going to take care of my parents even, you know? So that's kind of why we wanted to touch on that here as we finished up. But is there anything And then I'll let Sulema kind of close this out. But is there anything that you feel leaving to our future students, resources, like, well, maybe we can get a list of resources to provide to students in the captions and stuff, but anything like one or two just right off the top of your head that you would really like to leave with them, be like, if they're struggling right now, they're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be a doctor, I don't know if I'm gonna be a lawyer, I don't even know if I should go to college because maybe I don't feel like right, like I don't know where the money's gonna come from. Is there anything that you can leave with them that might help them get a little closer to pursuing that journey?
Yeah. Let me see. I feel like resources are out there everywhere. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you get on Google these days and you Google something and you're going to get 10, 20, 40 resources or answers to your question. Yeah. And so it's easy to do. Sure. I would recommend people to just kind of continue to do that. I think the toughest part is motivation. Yeah. Maybe nowadays. So if I can leave anything to motivate students, young adults, or even high school students, I'm not exactly sure who the audience is reaching here, but depending where they're at, I think the biggest, going back to that mental, kind of setting, I wish there was like a setting that you can just go in your brain and set it for like, I don't know, success, achieve, push forward or something.
On go, come on, let's go.
And turn it on. Yeah. But I think that is the biggest, not feedback, but advice that I would like to leave with young people is think about your future, think about your motivation. For me, my biggest motivation was the struggle that my immigrant parents had. I'm an immigrant. Like, I was born in Mexico. I came here as an immigrant. So no one had to tell me that story. I knew it firsthand. Nice. So for me, my motivation was I was not brought to the U.S. to be in La La Land. I was brought to the U.S. because I was told there is a better future here and there are opportunities here that my parents didn't have in their country. So I cannot waste that. That's kind of how I saw it. And so I would tell young kids, find your motivation, find what is that for you? What is that story for you? And hold on to it. And every time you're going after a job, after a college application, after a scholarship, after an intern, after whatever it is, just... And you feel like you don't belong or like you're an imposter or whatever, ask yourself, like, okay, why am I doing this? And how is this getting me closer to where I want to be? And with that, think about your future and where you need to be better than your parents or whoever it is, because trust me, somebody sacrificed something for you to be here. Yeah. And, so to me, it was my parents' sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So... Sure. People find what that is for you.
Yeah. Motivation. Find yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Anita, for coming. And finally, we're all in the same room, which is great. This is our first in-person episode. And I'm so glad that you were, So I'm so glad that you were our first guest for this season. And we will see you on the next episode, hopefully.
And real quick, we know it's election season. You're running for office. We want to encourage everybody. We don't take a political affiliation, but everybody get out there and vote. We do encourage that. So, get active. You want to see change, be part of that change. So thank you guys.
Yes, get informed and go vote.
Yes. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much to Yanira for being here. Again, she's doing a lot of great stuff in the community. Feel free to check her out on LinkedIn. And just thank you for being here. Happy late National Latina Day.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
Adios.